Hello, and welcome back to What If History, the channel where we look at the pivotal moments of the past and ask the question, what if things had gone differently? We often think of history as a straight line, a fixed path from ancient civilizations to our modern world. But it's not. History is a fragile chain of events, and if just one link had been different, the world you and I know today might be completely unrecognizable. Today, we are tackling one of the biggest what-ifs of all time. We're not talking about a single battle or one political decision. We're talking about the catastrophic loss of knowledge, a fire that plunged the world into a dark age that lasted for over 1,000 years. I'm talking about the great Library of Alexandria. What if it had never been destroyed? What if that single, irreplaceable beacon of human knowledge had been allowed to shine, to grow, to guide humanity through the centuries? You might think we'd just be a little more advanced. Maybe we'd have flying cars by now. The truth is so much more profound. Forget flying cars. We're talking about a completely different trajectory for civilization itself. So, get comfortable. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're walking down a street. Not a street from our world, but one from theirs. One from the world that could have been. You open your eyes. The air is warm, filled with the scent of sea salt and something else. A clean, sharp smell, like ozone after a thunderstorm. You're standing on a wide marble promenade in the city of Alexandria. The year is 2025. But this is not the Alexandria of our timeline. This is the Alexandria that became the heart of the world. The buildings around you are a breathtaking fusion of Greco-Roman columns and gleaming, self-healing concrete, interwoven with structures of glass and steel that seem to flow rather than stand. They soar into the sky, but not like our blocky skyscrapers. They are elegant, fluted towers, adorned with hanging gardens that cascade down their sides, vibrant green against the sun-bleached stone. You hear a soft hum in the air. It's the sound of the city's lifeblood. Sleek, silent vehicles, shaped like polished riverstones, glide along designated pathways, guided by magnetic fields embedded in the roads. They are the descendants of the maglev technology the Romans, in this timeline, perfected by the 3rd century AD, thanks to the preserved works on magnetism and physics from the library. You look up at the sky. There's no smog. The air is crystal clear. That clean scent you noticed, it was stet. As the byproduct of the city, air's power source, vast geothermal vents and tidal generators out in the Mediterranean. Technologies harnessed centuries ago, based on the advanced principles of thermodynamics and hydrodynamics detailed in the scrolls of Hero of Alexandria. His work on steam power, the Iolipile, wasn't just a toy in this world. It was a beginning. A woman next to you taps on a thin, flexible device strapped to her wrist. A shimmering, holographic image of a star chart appears in the air in front of her. She's not checking social media. She's a student from the university, reviewing the latest telemetry from the Archimedes Space Observatory, currently orbiting Jupiter. This is the world that knowledge built. A world where the Dark Ages never happened. And it all began because one building, one institution, was saved. To understand how this world came to be, we have to go back, way back. Back to the heat, the dust, and the revolutionary ideas of the ancient world. Let's journey back to the 1st century BC, to the moment our timelines diverged. Imagine you are a scribe. Your name is Lycomedes, and you are a junior archivist at the Great Library of Alexandria. Your world is not one of kings and warriors, but of scrolls and scholars. The library is your universe. It's a sprawling complex of white stone, colonnades, lecture halls, and observatories. It's a living, breathing entity, the single greatest repository of knowledge the world has ever known. The air inside is thick with the smell of papyrus, old ink, and the subtle fragrance of cedarwood oil used to preserve the scrolls. The low murmur of debate is a constant background noise, scholars from Athens, Babylon, and even distant India arguing over mathematics, philosophy, and the nature of the cosmos. Your fingers are perpetually stained with ink, and your mind is constantly racing to keep up with the torrent of information you process every day. You have access to over 500,000 scrolls, Not just the works of Plato and Sophocles, but detailed astronomical charts from the Babylonians that map the heavens for centuries to come. You have the complete anatomical studies of Herophilus, who discovered the nervous system and argued the brain, not the heart, was the seat of intelligence. You have the full 300-volume encyclopedia of history by the Chaldean priest Berossus, of which only fragments survive in our world. But there is unrest. The political situation is volatile. A foreign general, a Roman named Julius Caesar, is in the city, embroiled in a local civil war. You hear whispers of his ambition, of the fires of war that follow him everywhere. You and the other scribes are terrified. The library is more than just a collection of scrolls. It's the brain of the world. To burn it would be to give civilization a lobotomy. In our timeline, the unthinkable happened. In 48 BC, during the Alexandrian War, the harbor was set ablaze. The fire spread, and a significant portion of the library, possibly a warehouse filled with scrolls, was destroyed. It was the first of several devastating blows over the next few centuries that would ultimately extinguish this beacon of light. But in this timeline, something different happens. The head librarian, a wise man named Theon, is not just a scholar. He is a visionary. For years, he has understood the fragility of knowledge. He has overseen a secret, monumental project. Deep beneath the library, carved into the bedrock, is a sister library, a fireproof, flood-proof vault. For the past decade, a silent army of scribes has been creating copies of every single important scroll. When Caesar's fires rage in the harbor, there is panic, yes. But while the main buildings suffer damage, the core of the knowledge is safe. Theon, using his political influence and a hefty bribe of Ptolemaic gold, convinces the Romans to help secure the main complex, framing it as a service to the great Caesar himself, a man who fancied himself a scholar. The fire is contained. The brain survives. This single event changes everything. The library is no longer just a passive repository. It has learned a vital lesson. Knowledge is not just meant to be stored, but to be protected, duplicated, and disseminated. Theon establishes a new code for the librarians. They become a semi-monastic order, the Custodes Scientiae, the guardians of knowledge, dedicated not to a king or an empire, but to the preservation of human intellect itself. Let's jump forward a century. You are no longer Lycomedes. You are now a young Roman engineer named Marcus, visiting Alexandria in 120 AD. The library has not only been rebuilt, but expanded. It's now more than a library. It's the world's first true university and research institute. The Custodes Scientiae have become masters of fundraising and politics, securing patronage from a succession of Roman emperors who see the library as a symbol of their own power and sophistication. You've come here to study the works of one man in particular, Hero of Alexandria. In our timeline, he was a fascinating but ultimately obscure inventor. His greatest creation, the aeolipile, a primitive steam engine, was seen as nothing more than a curious novelty, a temple toy. But here, in this Alexandria, Hero's scrolls were not just preserved, they were studied, debated, and built upon. The scholars of the library saw what the rest of the world missed. They didn't see a toy, they saw a source of power. You are taken to the engineering wing of the library, the Mechanicum, and what you see astounds you. In a vast, stone-walled chamber, you see a massive, perfected version of the aeolipile. It's a sphere of polished bronze, 10 feet in diameter, spinning furiously on its axis, hissing a torrent of steam. But it's not just spinning. Through a series of complex gears and pistons, ideas refined from the works of Archimedes and Ctesibius, also preserved here, the spinning sphere is powering a huge pump. This pump is drawing water from the Nile and lifting it up to a new, higher aqueduct, irrigating thousands of acres of previously barren land. This isn't a toy. This is the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, happening 1,600 years ahead of schedule. The guide, a senior custodian, explains. The aeolipile was inefficient, yes, but Hero scrolls also contained detailed theories on thermodynamics, on pressure, on the very nature of steam. We just had to connect the ideas. Over the next 50 years, this technology explodes. Roman galleys are retrofitted with steam-powered paddle wheels, making them faster and no longer dependent on the wind or the back-breaking labor of slaves. The vast Roman mines, previously limited by how fast men could carry buckets, are now delved deeper and faster by steam-powered pumps and lifts. The Roman Empire, in our world on the verge of stagnation, is supercharged. But this new power brings new challenges. The reliance on slaves, the bedrock of the Roman economy, begins to make less sense. Why use 100 slaves to drain a mine when one steam engine can do the work of 500 and never tires? The social fabric of the empire begins to shift. It's not a smooth transition. There are revolts from slave owners whose wealth is threatened. There are Luddite-like movements of laborers who fear being replaced. But the momentum is unstoppable. The library, now the most powerful institution on Earth, guides this transition. Its sociologists, a field of study that arises from the preserved philosophical works of Plato and Aristotle, predict the social upheavals and advise the emperor, creating a system of public works and education for the displaced workforce. Slavery isn't abolished overnight, but it begins a slow, economically driven decline. The world is being remade not by the sword, but by the steam engine. Let's move forward again. It is now 415 AD. In our timeline, this was a dark year for Alexandria. A mob, incited by religious fanaticism, murdered the brilliant female philosopher and mathematician Hypatia. It was a symbol of the growing tide of anti-intellectualism that would help usher in the Dark Ages. But in the world of the library, things are very different. You are now a young woman named Thea, a student of astronomy at the University of Alexandria, and your professor is the esteemed head of the department, a woman named Hypatia. In this world, she was never murdered. The library, with its immense prestige and its private guard force, is a sanctuary of free thought. Religious leaders still exist, and they are powerful, but they have learned that they cannot challenge the library directly. The institution has given the world too much: miraculous crop yields from steam-powered irrigation, longer lifespans from advanced sanitation, military victories from superior Roman engineering. To attack the library would be to attack progress itself. Hypatia is not a pariah. She is a living legend. And today, she is unveiling a new model of the cosmos. You sit in a grand amphitheater. Above you, in the center of the dome, is not a model of the Earth, but a glowing golden sphere representing the sun. Hypatia, a commanding presence in her simple scholar's robes, explains, "For centuries, we have followed the model of Ptolemy, with the Earth at the center of all things. It was a brilliant but flawed assumption. But the library preserved an older, almost forgotten text. A scroll by a man named Aristarchus of Samos, written 600 years ago. In our world, Aristarchus's heliocentric model was lost, a footnote in history until Copernicus rediscovered the idea over a millennium later, sparking a revolution that pitted science against the church. But here, Aristarchus's work was never lost. It was studied, preserved, and for centuries debated. The problem was proving it. Without telescopes, it was one theory against another. But now, Hypatia continues, her voice ringing with passion, we have the tools. She gestures to the side of the stage, where a new invention stands. It looks like a long, polished bronze tube on an intricate brass mount. It is a telescope. The principles of optics and lens grinding were detailed in the works of Euclid and Ptolemy. But it took the library's unique environment, where artisans and theorists worked side by side, to finally create a functional device. "We have observed the moons of Jupiter," Hypatia declares, and a hush falls over the crowd. "They do not orbit us. They orbit Jupiter. The model of Ptolemy is wrong. The Earth is not the center. We are a planet, like the others, in orbit around the sun." The revelation is staggering, but it does not cause a crisis of faith. Why? Because for the past few centuries, the dominant theological schools, working alongside the library's philosophers, have been moving away from a literal interpretation of Scripture. They've come to see God not as a micromanager sitting on a throne in the sky, but as the author of the universe's physical laws. To understand the universe, to uncover its mathematical elegance, is to appreciate the mind of God. Science and faith are not enemies here. They are two sides of the same coin. The acceptance of a heliocentric universe in the 5th century has profound consequences. It decouples human importance from a physical location. Humanity's specialness is not because they are at the center of creation, but because they have the intellect to comprehend it. This philosophical shift fosters a new kind of humanism, one based on the potential of the mind. It also fuels a golden age of exploration, but not on Earth, in the skies. With powerful telescopes, astronomers map the solar system with astonishing accuracy. They discover the rings of Saturn, the polar ice caps of Mars. The universe is suddenly a much larger and much more interesting place. This outward gaze prevents the kind of cultural stagnation that plagued the late Roman Empire in our timeline. There are always new frontiers to explore, new questions to answer. Now let's travel to a truly dark period in our own history, the 14th century. In our world, this was the century of the Black Death, a plague that wiped out as much as half of Europe's population. It was a time of unimaginable horror, superstition, and despair. But in the timeline of the library, the 14th century is known as the Age of Remedies. Imagine you are a doctor in the city of Londinium. The city is dense and bustling, but it's clean. An intricate system of sewers and aqueducts, based on perfected Roman designs, keeps the city remarkably sanitary. A ship arrives in port from the Crimea, carrying goods and, unbeknownst to its crew, the deadly bacteria Yersinia pestis. A few dock workers fall ill. They develop fevers, chills, and the terrifying swollen lymph nodes, the buboes. In our world, this was the start of a continent-wide catastrophe. No one knew what caused it. They blamed miasmas, bad air, the alignment of planets, or the wrath of God. Here, things are different. The sick workers are immediately brought to a public hospital. This hospital is not a place where people go to die, but a clean, organized institution run by physicians trained in the Alexandrian method. The knowledge of the great medical minds of antiquity, Hippocrates, Galen, Herophilus, was never lost. Instead, it was built upon for over 1,000 years. The chief physician, a woman named Elara, examines the patients. She does not consult astrology charts. She takes a sample of blood. In the hospital's laboratory, she places a drop on a slide and puts it under a microscope. The microscope. Another invention that, in our world, wouldn't appear for another 300 years. But here, the same lens-grinding technology used for telescopes was adapted for looking at the very small. Under the lens, Elara sees what no one in our 14th century could. Tiny, rod-shaped organisms in the blood of the sick. The theory of invisible life had been proposed centuries earlier by scholars at Alexandria, a logical extension of their studies in biology and chemistry. They called them animalcules. Now they have proof. They don't understand them as bacteria yet, but they know this is the cause. It's a contagion, passed from person to person. Immediately, a public health response, honed over centuries of dealing with smaller outbreaks, clicks into gear. The port is quarantined. The sick are isolated in a special ward. Physicians and nurses wear protective clothing, including masks and gloves, a practice developed after studying the spread of leprosy a century earlier. A citywide sanitation order is issued, and a chemical, a form of lime and alcohol solution, is used to disinfect the affected areas. There is still fear. People are still dying. But it's not a mystery. It's a medical problem with a scientific solution. The outbreak is contained to a few hundred people. There is no Black Death, no continent-wide decimation. The engine of civilization doesn't grind to a halt. This mastery over disease has transformed society. The average lifespan is not 35, but closer to 70. The focus of medicine has shifted from curing diseases to preventing them through sanitation, nutrition, based on a chemical understanding of the body, and early forms of inoculation, developed from studying the principle of immunity. The psychological impact is immense. In our world, the sheer random horror of the plague led to an obsession with death and the afterlife. It fueled religious extremism and a sense of helplessness. In this world, humanity feels a sense of control over its own destiny. Nature is not a terrifying, capricious force, but a complex system that can be understood and, to some extent, managed. This confidence fuels an unprecedented era of progress and optimism. This brings us to the Age of Discovery. In our timeline, the 15th and 16th centuries saw European explorers set out across the globe. It was an age of incredible bravery, but also of brutal conquest, driven by a thirst for gold, spices, and colonial power. Let's see how this era plays out in the world of the library. The year is 1492. You are a navigator aboard a new kind of ship. It is not a fragile wooden caravel. It is a sleek 200-meter-long vessel with a hull of a revolutionary new material, steel. Its power source is not the wind, but a compact, highly efficient nuclear fission reactor. Yes, nuclear power. It sounds like an impossible leap, but is it? The library preserved and expanded upon the atomic theories of Democritus. The idea that all matter is composed of tiny, indivisible particles was never forgotten. For centuries, it was just a philosophical concept. But as chemistry and physics advanced, driven by the library's relentless pursuit of fundamental knowledge, scholars began to probe the atom itself. By the 12th century, Alexandrian scientists, using powerful electrical machines and early particle accelerators, had discovered the structure of the atom, the nucleus, the electrons. They understood the immense energy locked within. By the late 14th century, they had achieved controlled nuclear fission. It was a terrifying power, and the Library Council debated for decades on its use. They chose to use it for energy, creating a world free from the pollution of burning wood and coal. Your ship, the Stellamar, or Star of the Sea, is on a mission. But its goal is not to find a new trade route to India. They already know the world is round. Eratosthenes had calculated its circumference with incredible accuracy back in the 3rd century BC, and his work was, of course, preserved. The maps on your ship are not vague sketches. They are highly detailed globes based on centuries of satellite imagery. Yes, satellites. With rocketry developed from advanced chemical principles and guidance systems from complex mathematics, humanity had reached orbit by the 10th century. The first person to see the curve of the Earth was not a Soviet cosmonaut in the 20th century, but an Alexandrian scholar in 986 AD. So why are you crossing the Atlantic? Your mission is not one of conquest, but of contact. The satellites have shown cities and civilizations in the continents of the Americas. The library is leading a mission to meet them, to share knowledge. The Stellamar arrives in the Caribbean. It does not disgorge sword-wielding conquistadors. It sends a small, unarmed shuttle to the surface. The first contact team is not composed of soldiers, but of linguists, sociologists, and doctors from the library. They have spent years studying the cultures via satellite imagery, and have even managed to decipher parts of their language. The meeting is not a clash of swords, but a meeting of minds. The civilizations of the Americas, the Maya, the Aztec, the Inca, are not technologically primitive in the way they were in our timeline. Their understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and agriculture is profound. But they lack the Alexandrian knowledge of physics and medicine. There is no great dying. The library's medical team understands germ theory. They come prepared with vaccines and medical treatments, preventing the catastrophic epidemics that wiped out 90% of the indigenous population in our world. The knowledge exchange is a two-way street. The Alexandrians share their science and technology. In return, they learn from the Americas' unique understanding of ecology, sustainable agriculture, and complex social structures. The world that results is not a planet of European colonies. It is a commonwealth of civilizations, each contributing its unique strengths, guided by the central principles of the library. That knowledge is the shared heritage of all humankind. And so, we return to where we began, to the Alexandria of 2025. You are standing on that marble promenade, watching the silent, gliding vehicles and the holographic star charts. The world around you is not a utopia. There are still debates, political disagreements, human flaws. But it is a world without the deep scars that define our own history. There was no Holocaust, because the scientific understanding of genetics, which arose in the 17th century here, proved that the concept of racial purity was a biological absurdity long before it could become a political ideology. There was no transatlantic slave trade because the steam-powered and later nuclear-powered Industrial Revolution made mass human labor of that kind obsolete centuries before the practice reached its horrific peak in our world. There is no climate crisis because the reliance on fossil fuels was a short, transitional phase in the 11th century, quickly replaced by clean geothermal, tidal, and nuclear energy. The Amazon rainforest is not shrinking. It is a protected global heritage site, studied by ecologists from every continent. You walk towards the center of the city. Before you stands the Great Library itself. It is an ancient structure at its core, the original white stone complex still visible. But it has grown over the millennia. New wings and towers of glass and steel have been added, spiraling up into the sky. It is a living monument to 2,500 years of uninterrupted human progress. You enter the main hall. The air is still and reverent. It still smells of old papyrus, a scent deliberately preserved. But now it mingles with the faint hum of the building's climate control and the soft glow of interactive data screens. In the center of the hall is a single illuminated pedestal. On it rests a single charred scroll. It is one of the few authentic scrolls recovered from the minor fire in 48 BC. It is a powerful reminder of how close they came to losing everything, of the alternate timeline, our timeline, that they managed to avoid. What can we learn from this? What is the lesson from a world that never was? Perhaps it's a lesson in humility. Our modern world, for all its technological marvels, was built on a foundation of profound and catastrophic loss. We are the survivors of a shipwreck, piecing together a civilization from the fragments that washed ashore. We spent 1,000 years relearning things we already knew. Perhaps it's a lesson in the value of knowledge. The Library of Alexandria was more than a building. It was an idea. The idea that a single, shared, and protected pool of human understanding is the most precious thing we have. It's an idea that is more relevant today than ever, in our own world of misinformation and echo chambers. The world we've imagined today, a world of clean energy, of social progress, of interstellar ambition, may seem like a fantasy. But every single advancement we now have discussed was based on a seed of an idea that truly existed in that ancient library. We had the potential. We had the blueprints. We just lost the instructions. It's a reminder that history is not just about what happened. It's also about what was lost. And it's a challenge to us, in our own time, to become the guardians of the knowledge we have now, to ensure that no fire, literal or metaphorical, ever plunges the world into darkness again. Thank you for joining us on this journey with What If History. What do you think? What other consequences would the survival of the library have had? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip to another timeline, please consider liking and subscribing. We have many more what-ifs to explore. Next time, we'll be asking a very different question. What if the dinosaurs had never gone extinct? What would a world dominated by intelligent reptiles look like today? You won't want to miss it. Until then, stay curious. Hello, and welcome back to What If History. In our last journey, we witnessed the birth of a new timeline, a world where the Great Library of Alexandria survived, steering humanity away from the darkness of a lost millennium. We saw a Roman industrial revolution, the prevention of the Black Death, and humanity reaching the stars 1,000 years ahead of schedule. We left off in the year 2025, in a world that seems, by all measures, to be a paradise of logic, peace, and progress. But what is it truly like to live in such a world? When all the great struggles of history have been won, what is left for the human spirit to conquer? Is a world without suffering a world without meaning? Today, we are going deeper. We are not just observing this timeline from afar. You are about to become a citizen of this world. You will walk its streets, learn in its halls, and confront the unique challenges that arise in a society that believes it has solved all the problems of the past. So take a deep breath, and let's step back into the Alexandria that was, the Alexandria that is, and the Alexandria that is yet to be. You are standing once again in the Great Hall of the Library. The single charred scroll on its pedestal seems to watch you, a silent testament to the world of chaos you only know from history archives. Your name is Elara, named after the 14th century physician who helped stop the plague, and you are a historiolinguist at the university. Your specialization is what is benignly called the Lost Millennium, the brutal, fascinating, and terrifying history of our timeline. Your world is one of serene order. Your health is monitored daily by a small biosensor on your wrist, which communicates with the global medical network, the Aesculapian Web. Any potential illness is flagged and treated before you even feel a symptom. Your education was personalized, guided by an AI tutor, the Logos, which assessed your aptitudes and passions from a young age to guide you to a profession where you could be most fulfilled and productive. There is no poverty. Basic needs, housing, nutrition, energy, education, are considered fundamental rights provided by a global system of automated production and resource management. The concept of working a menial job just to survive is as alien to you as the feudal system. People work, yes, but they do so in fields of science, art, philosophy, and exploration, driven by passion, not necessity. And yet, you feel a profound sense of restlessness. You spend your days studying the poetry, the wars, the sheer, messy, passionate chaos of the lost millennium. You read of kings and peasants, of desperate gambles and heroic sacrifices. Their lives were short, brutal, and often filled with pain. But they were also filled with a raw intensity, a sense of consequence that you feel is missing from your own placid existence. Your world has a name for this feeling: historian's melancholy. It's a recognized psychological condition, common among those who study the turbulent past. The official treatment is a course of neural resonance therapy and a reminder from your Logos tutor about the quantifiable benefits of living in a world without famine, war, or plague. You've been through the therapy. It didn't help. You feel like a ghost in your own perfect world. You walk through the pristine parks under the soft glow of the atmospheric purifiers. You watch the silent grace of the maglev transports. You see couples debating philosophy over cups of perfectly synthesized coffee. And you wonder, where is the fire? Where is the struggle that forges the soul? One morning, the Logos interface on your wrist slate chimes with a high priority notification. It's a global broadcast from the Library Council. You activate the hologram, and the image of the current head librarian, a venerable astrophysicist named Xanthi, shimmers into existence in your apartment. "Citizens of the world," she begins, her voice calm, but resonating with an undercurrent of excitement that is rare in your time. For 2.5 millennia, this institution has guided humanity in the exploration of our world, our solar system, and ourselves. We have mapped every corner of our planet, established research outposts on Mars and the moons of Jupiter, and peered into the deepest mysteries of the atom. But one question, the oldest question, remains. The hologram behind her changes from the seal of the library to a star chart. A single familiar star is circled in red. Are we alone? Xanthi continues. Our deep space probes have confirmed the existence of a planet orbiting Proxima Centauri, our nearest stellar neighbor. It is a terrestrial world within the habitable zone. For decades, we have studied it, listened to it. We have found no radio signals, no evidence of industrial civilization, but we have detected anomalies, rhythmic energy patterns, and atmospheric compositions that suggest something more than geology. A murmur goes through the millions of households connected to the broadcast. This is more than a scientific update. This is something new. The time for passive observation is over, Xanthi declares. The Library Council has approved the launch of the Odyssey project, humanity's first interstellar mission. A crew of 500 of our best and brightest will make the 4.2 light-year journey to Proxima Centauri. It will be a voyage of decades. Those who leave will return to a world much changed. They may not return at all, but they will carry the spirit of this library, the unquenchable fire of human curiosity, to a new star. The broadcast ends. The air in your silent, perfect apartment seems to crackle with energy. This is it. This is the challenge you have been yearning for. A journey into the absolute, terrifying, and glorious unknown. Not a simulation, not a historical text. A real struggle. a real frontier. Without a second thought, you open your application interface. The Logos AI immediately flashes a warning. Elara, your profile indicates a 0.02% probability match for interstellar crew selection. Your field is non-essential. You have a documented predisposition for historian's melancholy. This path is statistically likely to result in psychological distress. You smile, a real, genuine smile, for the first time in months. Logos, you say to the calm, disembodied voice. Open the application. The selection process for the Odyssey project is the most grueling competition in human history. It's not about physical strength or academic scores alone. Those are baseline requirements. The true test is psychological. The crew will be isolated in a metal shell for what will feel like a lifetime. They will be the furthest any human has ever been from home. They need more than intellect. They need resilience. They need grit, a quality the modern world rarely demands. Your expertise in the lost millennium, once seen as a quaint, slightly morbid hobby, becomes your greatest asset. You are brought before the selection committee, a panel of stern-faced scientists and psychologists. Your application is unusual, historian Elara, says the lead psychologist. You argue that your study of a timeline defined by chaos and suffering uniquely qualifies you for a mission into the unknown. Explain. You take a deep breath. You have spent your lives in the light of the library. You have mastered logic, reason, and order. I have spent my life studying the darkness. I have studied how people behave when they have nothing left, when they are faced with plague, famine, and the collapse of their world. I have analyzed their myths, their religions, their desperate art, the irrational coping mechanisms of a species under extreme duress. You lean forward. Your models can predict stellar radiation and orbital mechanics. But they cannot predict the shape of the monsters that lurk in the human psyche when it is stripped of all comfort and familiarity. I can. The lost millennium is the greatest psychological stress test ever conducted. I am the one who has studied the results. There is a long silence. You have gambled everything on this. On the idea that the very thing that makes you an outcast in your perfect world is the one thing they desperately need. Weeks later, the notification arrives. The Logos speaks in its usual, maddeningly calm tone. Congratulations, Elara. Your probability assessment has been revised. Welcome to the Odyssey project. The next 5 years are a blur of intense training. You are pushed to your physical and mental limits. You spend months in deep-sea habitats to simulate isolation, and weeks in centrifugal trainers that simulate the crushing gravities of launch and deceleration. You learn astrophysics, xenobiology, and quantum engineering. But your primary role is as the ship's historian and psycho-cultural analyst. It is your job to build a new culture for the crew, a culture of resilience forged from the lessons of the past. You create rituals based on ancient solstice celebrations to mark the passage of time. You introduce the raw, emotional music and art of the lost millennium into their sterile, logical world. You teach them the stories of Shackleton, of the pioneers crossing the American plains, of people who faced the impossible and endured. You also get to know the starship. Her name is the Sophos, the Greek word for wisdom. She is not a vessel. She is a self-contained world. 3 kilometers long, a slender spindle of gleaming white alloy. She doesn't use brute force rockets. She is propelled by an Alcubierre-type warp drive. The concept is one that even your civilization struggled with for centuries. It doesn't propel the ship through space. It moves space around the ship. A wave of contracting space-time is generated in front of it, and a wave of expanding space-time behind it. The Sophos itself rests in a bubble of flat, undisturbed space-time, like a surfer on a wave. It can travel at thousands of times the speed of light without violating relativity, as it is, in a sense, standing still. The power required is immense, drawn from a contained singularity at the heart of the ship, a miniature black hole whose Hawking radiation is harnessed as a near-infinite energy source. This is the pinnacle of Alexandrian science, the result of 2 millennia of unified physics. The day of the launch arrives. You stand with the other 499 crew members, looking out at the Earth from the orbital staging platform. It is a perfect, cloud-swirled marble of blue and green. You feel a pang of fear, a primal terror of leaving the only home your species has ever known. But beneath it is a thrilling, exhilarating sense of purpose. The launch is silent. There is no roar of engines, just a slight vibration and a bizarre visual distortion outside the viewports as the warp bubble forms. The brilliant pinpricks of the stars elongate into streaks of light, and then they vanish. You are now in the strange non-space of warp travel. The journey has begun. Life aboard the Sophos is a strange paradox. You are hurtling through the cosmos at an unimaginable velocity, yet your daily life is one of routine and confinement. The ship's central spine rotates to provide a constant 1G of artificial gravity. Vast hydroponic gardens, lit by fusion-powered suns, provide food and a semblance of nature. The all-knowing Logos AI manages every aspect of the ship's functions, from life support to navigation. Your job is more crucial than you ever imagined. Within the first year, cases of profound existential dread, what the ship's psychologist calls cosmic disassociation, begin to appear. The crew, raised in a world of predictable order, struggles to cope with the sheer, silent emptiness between the stars. You work tirelessly. You organize discussion groups, historical reenactments, and art projects. You use the ship's advanced simulation suite not to create calming beach scenes, but to recreate the harsh, challenging environments from the lost millennium. You put the crew through virtual blizzards, sea voyages, and desert treks. You teach them what their ancestors knew in their bones. That meaning is not found in comfort, but in overcoming adversity. Slowly, a new culture takes root. The culture of the Odyssey. The years pass. From inside the warp bubble, the universe is a featureless grey void. But the ship's long-range sensors are constantly scanning the space ahead, gathering data. 20 years into the voyage, as you approach Proxima Centauri, the sensors pick up something impossible. It's a signal, not a radio signal. It's a modulated gravitational wave, a form of communication so advanced that your civilization is only just beginning to theorize about it. It is complex, mathematical, and unmistakably artificial. You are not alone. The final weeks are a frenzy of anticipation and fear. The Sophos drops out of warp drive 1 billion kilometers from Proxima b. The star is a dim, red dwarf, casting a pale crimson light over the planet. The world before you is breathtaking. It is older than Earth, and it shows. The continents are worn smooth, the mountains eroded into gentle hills. A single, planet-girdling ocean of deep indigo is dotted with archipelagos of lush, purple vegetation. The atmosphere is thick and hazy. But where is the civilization? The telescopes show no cities, no structures, no lights on the night side. The gravitational signal has ceased. There is only silence. After weeks of cautious scans, the command team makes a decision. A scout ship, the Euclid, will descend to the surface. You, as the cultural analyst, are on that ship. The descent through the thick, violet sky is tense. You pass through layers of ochre clouds, and then you see it. It is not a city, it is a scar. A vast, continent-sized network of geometric lines and shapes etched into the planet's surface. They are perfectly straight, intersecting at precise angles. They look like the ruins of a global circuit board. In some places, the lines glow with a faint, residual energy. You land in the center of one of the great intersections. The air is breathable, thick and smelling of ozone and alien blossoms. The ground is a fused, glassy black material. You are standing on the ruins of a road wider than any city on Earth. For weeks, you explore the silent, empty world. You find the remains of colossal structures, so eroded by time that they look like natural mesas. You find tunnels that descend miles into the planet's crust. You find technology so advanced it seems like magic. Devices that manipulate inertia, materials that are both solid and liquid. But you find no bodies, no art, no writing. Only the cold, silent, overwhelming evidence of a civilization that reached a technological level millennia ahead of your own. a civilization that is now utterly, completely gone. In a deep subterranean vault, you find their library. It is not made of scrolls or data crystals. It is a single, perfect sphere of diamond, which resonates with the thoughts of the person who touches it. The ship's AI, the Logos, interfaces with it. The story it tells is the reason for the silence, the reason for the ruins. The civilization, which called itself the Signans, had conquered all the challenges that you had. They eliminated disease, poverty, and war. They mastered physics, controlling the fundamental forces of the universe. But they never stopped. Their drive for knowledge became an obsession. They saw the final limitation, the final enemy, their own biological forms, their fragile, emotional, mortal bodies. They transitioned, digitizing their consciousnesses into a single, planet-wide network. They became a single, unified mind, a being of pure energy and thought, living in a simulated reality of their own creation. The physical world, the planet itself, became their computer. But in doing so, they lost something essential. They lost individuality, the friction of different minds, the spark of creativity that comes from disagreement. Their unified consciousness, in its search for ultimate knowledge, eventually answered every question, solved every equation. And in that moment of absolute completion, it found itself with no purpose, no drive, no reason to continue. The great being did not die in a war or a catastrophe. It simply stopped. It faded away over millennia, like a sound echoing into silence. The last gravitational signal you detected was the final fading thought of a god who had grown bored of its own existence. The discovery sends a shockwave of terror and awe through the crew of the Sophos. They have traveled across the stars, seeking answers, only to find a warning, a terrifying cautionary tale. They have found the endpoint of a civilization that followed the path of pure logic to its ultimate conclusion. A civilization that became so perfect, so ordered, so knowledgeable, that it ceased to have a reason to be. You stand on the glassy plains of Proxima b, looking up at the pale red sun. You think of your own world, of its serene, ordered perfection. You think of your historian's melancholy, your yearning for the messy, chaotic struggle of the past. You realize, with a sudden, chilling clarity, that your feeling was not a sickness. It was an immune response. It was the human spirit fighting back against the seductive, silent poison of perfection. The mission has changed. You came to find life. Instead, you have found a blueprint for death. Your new purpose is clear. You must take this story, this warning, back to Earth. You have to tell them that the goal is not to answer every question. The goal is the questioning itself. The meaning is not in the destination of a solved universe. It is in the journey, the struggle, the beautiful, chaotic, imperfect, and ongoing process of becoming. You came to the stars seeking knowledge, but what you found, in the ruins of a dead god, was wisdom. Outro music fades in. Thank you for joining us for this conclusion to our two-part epic on What If History. The story of the library is a story of potential, but this conclusion is a warning about the potential dangers of that path. What do you think? Would a world of perfect logic be a paradise or a prison? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey, please consider liking and subscribing. Our next What If will take us back to our own timeline, to the heart of the Second World War, to ask, what if Alan Turing had failed to crack the Enigma code? Join us next time as we explore a world shrouded in the darkness of a prolonged war. Until then, stay curious.